I had never seen my family act like this before. My mom's hand hit my cheek across the dinner table, sharp and fast. I froze. My brother, sitting across from me, clapped slowly, like he was applauding a performance. His grin was unnerving. Dad, leaning back in his chair, smirked as if he knew something I didn't. I could barely breathe. Earlier that day, I had asked a simple question about our finances. I didn't think it was controversial, but apparently it was. Mom lost it immediately, yelling that I should mind my own business. When I tried to respond calmly, she slapped me. My brother laughed, clapping sarcastically. Dad didn't intervene. The three of them felt united against me in some unspoken way. I left the table silently, retreating to my room. My hands shook as I picked up my phone. The first call I made was to my best friend, Mia. I needed to tell someone outside the house what had just happened. She listened without judgment. "Jason, that's not okay," she said simply. "You deserve to be treated with respect." The second call went to my older cousin Alex, who had lived on his own for years. I wanted advice, someone experienced. Alex told me to pack a bag if I felt unsafe and reminded me that home shouldn't feel like a prison. The third call, the hardest, was to my therapist. I explained everything: the slap, the clapping, Dad's smirk, the feeling of being trapped. My therapist listened, asking questions that helped me clarify my feelings and my options. "You have a right to protect yourself," she said. That night, I made a decision. I wouldn't ignore what happened. I wouldn't stay silent. I packed a small bag with clothes, toiletries, and important documents. My heart pounded as I made the final call to a friend who could let me stay for the night. Driving away from my house, I felt fear and relief intertwined. For the first time, I felt I was taking control of my life. Mia and Alex stayed on the line, supporting me until I reached my friend's apartment safely. The next day, I realized that I couldn't go back to a home where I was physically and emotionally unsafe. I began documenting incidents, writing down dates and details in case I needed to report the abuse. I called a local support hotline for guidance. They helped me understand my rights and options, including temporary housing and counseling. Over the next week, I avoided contact with my parents unless necessary, focusing on my own safety and mental health. My brother texted sarcastic messages, but I ignored them. I realized that distance was the only way to protect myself. I started attending weekly therapy sessions to process the trauma, learning coping mechanisms and strategies for self-care. I also informed a close friend, Marcus, about the situation, creating a support network outside my family. Each day felt heavy, but I gained strength knowing I was taking steps to reclaim my autonomy. I researched local resources for young adults experiencing family conflict and abuse, taking notes and planning next steps. One evening, I received a call from Dad. His tone was cautious, almost defensive. I chose to remain calm and set boundaries. "I'm focusing on myself right now," I said firmly. "I will not engage in arguments or accept abuse." He paused, then ended the call. I realized that accountability starts with me, not them. Weeks passed. I settled into a routine with friends and therapy, slowly rebuilding my confidence. I kept a journal of thoughts, feelings, and progress, noting how each day away from my toxic home improved my mental state. I started working extra hours at my part-time job, focusing on independence and financial security. I also began volunteering at a local community center, channeling energy into productive work rather than dwelling on anger. Every message from my family that tried to provoke or guilt me was met with calm boundaries and silence. I realized that emotional detachment was necessary for my well-being. I could care without being controlled. Months later, I received a call from the local authorities after a report about a minor family dispute. I cooperated fully, providing details of the abuse. This step was difficult but necessary to ensure protection for myself and potentially prevent future harm to others. I also contacted a legal aid service to understand my rights as an adult living independently. Through therapy, I learned to separate guilt and fear from rational decision-making, understanding that leaving was not betrayal but survival. Friends and mentors celebrated my independence, encouraging me to continue focusing on safety and emotional growth. I began planning long-term goals, moving to my own apartment, continuing education, and developing stable friendships. I found comfort in creative outlets, writing, photography, and painting, expressing emotions safely and constructively. Over time, the trauma's grip lessened, replaced by clarity and determination to live authentically. I realized that my parents' actions were not my fault and that seeking distance was an act of self-preservation. I continued therapy, attending group sessions for young adults experiencing family conflict, finding community and understanding. Eventually, I was able to communicate with my parents through mediated sessions, ensuring safe boundaries and accountability. I remained firm in refusing abuse, asserting that respect and safety were non-negotiable. My brother attempted to provoke me again, but I maintained distance and focused on personal growth. I discovered strength I hadn't known existed, realizing that my decisions had restored control over my life. Months later, I reflected on that night, the slap, the clapping, the smirk, and understood it as a turning point. 3 calls had changed everything. One to a friend, one to a relative, and one to a professional. They guided me toward safety. I realized that support systems are critical when family dynamics become harmful, and seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness. I continued building independence, moving to my own apartment and creating routines that promoted health and stability. I also pursued hobbies and passions I had neglected, finding joy and purpose outside the toxic environment. Therapy helped me establish healthy boundaries and avoid repeating patterns of codependency or emotional neglect. I strengthened relationships with supportive friends and mentors, appreciating community over isolation. Over the next year, I became confident in my ability to navigate challenges without fear or manipulation. I understood that leaving a harmful environment is necessary for mental health, growth, and long-term happiness. I remained cautious but open to rebuilding family connections under safe and respectful conditions. The memory of that night stayed with me, but it became a reminder of resilience, courage, and self-preservation. I continued documenting progress, goals, and lessons learned, creating a personal roadmap for the future. Eventually, I was able to live independently, thriving emotionally and professionally without fear of abuse. The night that began with violence and mockery ended with empowerment and clarity thanks to decisive action and support. I understood that calls for help can save lives and that seeking guidance is essential when family dynamics are toxic. In the end, I realized that personal safety and mental health must come before loyalty to dysfunctional relationships.